Happy Friday, everyone, and I'd like to welcome you to another edition of our workflow webinar series. This one is recording at home with the Accidentals. And as you can see on our screens, we've got some guests with us, Ms. Katie Larson and Sav Beist and Michael Dawes of the Accidentals. So before we dig in, though, just want to cover some housekeeping items. So as you can see, we're all broadcasting from our various homes locations. If we have any issues, we'll do our best to resolve those and get everything back in order. And just a reminder, if you have any questions, feel free to type those in the questions pane as we're rolling along here. So happy to have you guys on today. It's been an interesting time period for everyone, and everyone's had to make some interesting adjustments to adapt and try and keep their careers rolling. And we thought it'd be great to cover this topic as a lot of people have been doing this lately. So, but to start out, I'd like to see if you could tell us a little bit about yourselves and how the band got together.
Absolutely. So we're a three-piece indie folk pop band out of Michigan, and we've basically been on the road for the past 6 years, touring and teaching workshops, recording, doing session work, all sorts of things. It's been about 9 years since Sav and I started the band.
Yeah.
You want to talk about how we met?
Yes.
Way back in our high school
Dork days. We met in our high school public orchestra program. So I actually, right now in this band, I play violin, mandolin, octave mandolin, acoustic and electric guitar, and electric bass. Katie plays all those instruments minus the violin plus the cello. And Michael plays multiple instruments as well. And he also plays drums and does background vocals in the Accidentals. So that's the musical iteration. But we met in our public high school orchestra program, much by accident, kind of came together, and we were supposed to rehearse this project that we volunteered to do, and instead we started playing the White Stripes, and that pretty much characterizes our entire band history. So, yeah, it's been 9 years.
Yeah, then we met Michael a few years after that at a music festival in Michigan.
Yeah, and I was such a nerd. I was such a fan of the band before I was in the band. Like I loved the album Bittersweet that they put out in 2013 and listened to that like every day. So it was fun. When I joined the band, they didn't have to teach me any of the songs because I knew them all already. So
it's like that dream that people have where like the drummer breaks his leg and they're like, who knows how to play drums?
Does somebody
for all
here
of
know how to play these songs? I'm like, I do. So
That's great. Excellent. So here we are all at home, and you came up with the great idea, like so many people do. Hey, we need to create our own recording environment. So when did you guys decide that it was time to do that?
So I actually just got my journals back from this time period. In March, we were still on the road. So we were touring Arkansas. We were teaching a ton of workshops for kids. And that was right around the time where our gigs started to get canceled. And we realized it was because of a pandemic. And right around that point, we were actually supposed to fly to Portland and record the rest of our album with our friend and fellow producer, Tucker Martine. That ended up not happening. So instead, we detoured and we drove straight through the night from Arkansas back to Michigan. And at that point, we were like, how are we going to do this? We still have deadlines that we need to meet. We really want to get done with this record. Like, how do we even go about starting this process?
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. We had prepared to move down to Nashville since we've been co-writing and playing strings, and we'd been there for the beginning of the year. And so some of our stuff was there, but ultimately we wanted to be back with our families in Michigan and see what would happen. And we got back, and it took a while to dawn on us that things were not going to be going back to normal for a long time. And we basically, we had to sit down and ask ourselves, like, what are we going to do now? There's some more live shows, and we decided to flip and go to live streaming and build a home studio to finish the record we had started on our own.
which ended up being difficult, lemon difficult, rather than easy peasy. It was not an easy process, and it was full of just every kind of issue you can think of. We were constantly learning all the time, which was good for us, but it's also, it can be really hard to start from scratch and use only what you have. And at the time, we basically had all the gear that we typically tour with. And we had Michael actually came up from his home and brought all of the stuff from his home studio. And with that, we were able to kind of have just enough to record the rest of this record in a professional way.
Yeah, we were really lucky, of course, we have our Shure microphone package that we use live, and we were able to use a lot of those in our home studio. And so we basically, one of the first things we did was just kind of like lay everything out and decide what do we need to order, what do we already have, and how are we going to make a plan.
Yep, and then we started drawing maps for where we were going to build stations within this attic space that we all tend to crash in when we're not touring. So,
well, let's get to some of that. I'm going to go ahead and start our little slideshow here that has some of these spaces here, and maybe you can talk us through each one of these as we go. Okay.
Sure thing.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Welcome to my room, everybody.
Yeah. Which this picture here is actually one of the last things that we recorded for the whole session. So this is kind of like the space in its final form.
Oh,
yeah,
wow. Okay.
This room evolved maybe 9 or 10 times throughout the course of it. But you can see there's a little bed that's flipped vertical. That is kind of the outmost point of the drum room. So right on either side of it are 45 boxes of unsold CDs that are stacked to make partition walls. And then we threw comforters over them to help kind of take out some of the bounce in the room. And we also have thumbtacked blankets to the ceilings. So you can see that the organ rotor is right underneath of one of those blankets, and it's surrounded on either side with comforters. So we were just kind of trying to block out as much reflection as possible, because you can see we're in an attic, and so there's a lot of sloped ceilings and a lot of bounce to try and reduce. And that's my dad on the organ.
Yeah, shout out Rick Beist.
Rick Beist.
Yeah. Very cool. All right, let me go to the next one here.
There's another angle of the vertical bed. You can see there's a little there's a box, basically. There's a Pelican case. There we go. Pelican case, that's where all of our Shure microphones live. So we're just kind of opening it up and trying to figure out how are we best going to utilize this space. I think we're like halfway through building the drum room in this photo. So, and you can see there's oh, go ahead, Michael.
I was just going to say the bed isn't in the center. So yeah, I think this was like on the first day of us building all of this.
Yeah, you can see we're starting the stations on either side. So the partition blanket, there's a blanket on a microphone stand that's been put into a T-pose. That's starting out my station in one of the far corners of the room. It's closest to us. And then you can see there's another gray blanket over microphone stand. That's sort of the beginnings of Katie's station. So this would allow us to basically record demos in isolation, just across from each other. We could all record at the same time.
All right, here's the next one. It's a little bit more. You got that one?
Yeah, there we go.
Perfect.
Okay.
So that's a lot of that's our rows of guitars that we have. We are sponsored by Takamine and Fender and Roland Boss and Shure. And you can see that kind of are setting up like the different guitars that we might need to utilize on the record. And there's my cat in the middle of the floor. That's our studio cat. I don't know if I'd recommend a studio cat. Studio dogs are really great. Studio cats like to bite cables, so we learned that the hard way.
That's true. We had a lot of XLRs that were lost to Nashville chewing on them over the course of the last few months.
Yeah. We had a lot of vocal takes, so we had to fade out the end because of little meows in the background.
Yeah. Studio dogs are way less maintenance, but.
We just got a new puppy, and he started chewing on my son's laptop cable. I'm like, oh boy, nope, get away from that.
So it's not just
even ours. School laptop. So I know what you mean there.
No.
But just behind that is just the drum set, the drum area, and that's also you can kind of see we started putting up blankets on either side of the drum kit, kind of around it. So this is pretty far into the process. We've kind of figured out where is it bouncing off of and covered up those spaces.
Cool. And how would you go about finding out where things are bouncing off of? What was your process for that?
Honestly, you want to
Trial and error.
Trial and error. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Trial and error is 100%. I think one of the most important things we learned from this entire experience is to trust your ears. It's just like you can have mic placement, you can like look on YouTube, you can watch all these guys do it, and you will learn good stuff from that. It's a good starting point to work off of. But if you are having a gut feeling like, oh man, I'm kind of hearing this weird flutter from this side of the room, you just have to keep trying stuff to figure out where it's coming from and move it until you stop hearing it.
And I'll add, this was like one of the final formations of the studio setup, but we moved things, or we got a workout moving around bookshelves and beds and desks. We moved things around so many times, and ended up, tested out where to find the best placement for the speakers for our workstation after we got a new Mac, and figured out what slope had the best response with the speakers. Then we ended up like changing it, and we like ended up, like Sav mentioned, we literally sat down and like as if we were architects, we like drew a bird's eye view of all the different ways we could spread out.
Definitely not with the same artistic proficiency as an architect, but
that's true.
But definitely with the intention in mind.
And doing the drum room too was super interesting from a learning standpoint on my end as well, because it was a combination of so many different things to get the drums sounding right. Not only was it mic placement on the drums and finding, the good sweet spots to place the microphones in, but also tuning the drums really well, which I had always had an issue with. So having the time to be able to learn how to do that, as well as you see, like all the blankets up and around, like getting rid of reflections and trying to figure out, like, is that reflection actually coming from the room, or is it because I can't tune my tom? So it's kind of like a give and take of all these different variables. But yeah, that picture right there is from inside, I think the first iteration of the drum room. When everything was a little bit further back. I think we ended up moving the walls and the bed a bit closer in to get some of the reflections down as well.
But yeah, driest noise possible, driest sounds coming in.
Absolutely.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that. And was there anything sonically you were going for on this record? Any inspiration you've heard from other recordings that you were going for, or were you looking to create your own sound, or a combination of those things?
I think we started out with the most important principle being that we wanted everything to sound closest to the actual integrity of the instrument going in. We didn't want to boost it with a preamp. We didn't want to EQ it before. We wanted to get the most accurate sound of the instrument as it was going in. So as a result, we would literally spend like an hour and a half just miking a guitar, trying out, okay, maybe if we put the 137s over here, or maybe if we put a beta 57 and a 137 over here on the guitar, like let's just try a bunch of different things. We ended up trying a bunch of different mic techniques, and we can get into that later. But basically, what we were trying to do first and foremost was just to get, if you know the sound of your instrument, how do you get that to translate in a digital setting without it losing some of its sound, some of its innate sound?
Each song we worked on was a little bit we didn't want to get stuck in a pattern. So each song we worked on, we approached new and listened to lots of, we did some more mandolin on this record than our past records. And so we listened to the Punch Brothers and Nickel Creek and tried to reference some of that, and also pay attention to arrangements. And we listened to Nickel Creek harmonies. We listened to a lot of Brandi Carlile because she's got such great energetic drums. We loved. We listened to some Phoebe Bridgers she's Stranger in the Alps. I think has some really great acoustic guitar when it's featured, and her doubled vocals are so beautiful.
Yeah, we also Rob Moose is a really great violin string arranger, and he did a lot of really great stuff on the Nationals records. So we were kind of listening to that for string arrangements. But as far as like the sound that we were going for. We definitely wanted to capture some of the kick and snare sound off of Brandi Carlile's previous early records. We were just like, yeah, this is what we're going for. And with like what Katie said with the mandolin, we were like, Punch Brothers, this will sound great. And like with the acoustic guitar, we actually referenced like tracks that we'd done with previous producers. With Tucker Martine, we were like, we really want to capture the same sound of this acoustic guitar. And so we would just spend a lot of time trying to reference that sound to get to it. It took a lot of trial and error. It was not easy.
Yes. Especially for the drum sounds. I think at the end there was a friend of ours, Brad Novak. Shout out to Brad Novak at the Beat Lab for helping us out with a bunch of drum things throughout that record. But yeah, we were trying to get like a really thick snare sound, and he ended up lending us this Ludwig Field snare drum that's about like this thick.
Oh my
and we
goodness.
set that on the kit, and it was just the punchiest, but it is kind of that trial and error. I mean, we went through 4 or 5 other snare drums, trying it out, retuning them, untuning them,
borrowing from friends.
Yeah, borrowing from friends just to try to get that right sound to land on it.
Well, me being a fellow drummer, we have to start there. So let's go around the kit here a little bit and talk about miking technique. And I see some close mics here. Definitely. Did you also throw up some room mics as well? Yeah.
So what you can't see in this picture, that I think it just wasn't set up at the time. We were maybe using it for something else, but we had a 141 as a mono overhead, and we turned that to the omnidirectional pattern to get that kind of image of the top of the kit. And then we had 2 room mics kind of edging over each of the CD box partitions, and those were 137s. Kind of aimed closer to like the body of the drums to try to get some more of the body in the room mics.
Yeah, because if you're gonna have like a dry sound in that drum room, then you want some of the actual stereo wide width to it as well. That's why we did that.
Yeah, because I think the first track that we did, we didn't have the room mics. We just had the overhead and the close mics,
and
it just sounded yeah. So it just ended up sounding a little too close. So we wanted something that would give the drum kit a little bit of room to breathe. So adding those room mics in definitely helped out with that. And then other than that, you can see we've got 57 on either one of the toms. We've got the Beta 52 down on the kick drum. And then for the snare drum, we had the Beta 57 on as our snare top mic, and then the Beta 56 as the snare bottom. So both like really direct supercardioid patterns for to capture the snare drum.
We ended up using that Beta 57 on almost everything we did too. It was such a versatile mic. It brought warmth to things that don't have a lot of warmth. Like there was, certain times where we would have the the 137 on one side of the guitar, and we're like, it's just capturing a lot of high end. Where's the body? And then we would put the Beta on it, and boom, there's your body.
Like talk about trial and error. I mean, we just kept coming back to the Beta 57. We'd try like 3 or 4 other mics, and then just come back to the Beta, and it was
on the cello too.
Yeah,
on the cello for sure. I found a picture from when we first started, and we initially tried to mic the cello with the Beta 52, the kick drum mic up close to try to get some of that low end. But I think we ended up replacing that with the Beta 57 as we went on.
Yeah.
Nice.
Totally.
Yeah, that's a great mic. We've seen a lot of people use that on vocals and just a lot of percussion, a lot of different stuff. So it's pretty cool. Absolutely. All right. Oh, here we are, Katie.
Yeah. Speaking of
cello.
Yeah.
The cello, I think I learned the most through the whole process about miking the cello. Since a lot of the previous sessions we've done with producers in Nashville and LA and Portland, everyone kind of has a different technique, I feel like, and we tried a bunch of different spots, and I think it's a good example too of the sound you're looking for coming from maybe the style of song. So I actually had 2 cellos, wooden cello and the Lewis and Clark carbon fiber cello from the pictures. And the carbon fiber cello is my go-to tour cello because it's so durable and it's got a very bright projecting volume. So I love it. And we ended up, I think, using the carbon fiber for some more of the pop and alternative tunes, and for some of the more folky tunes, we experimented with the wood cello. And kind of our first attempts, we experimented with the stereo pair with the small diaphragm condensers. So we would throw up the cardioid, like 137s or the 141s, and exactly what Michael said, like in our band, sometimes the cello is the bass. It holds down some of the root bass lines. So we really wanted to get a close-up, beefy, like low end. So what we ended up doing was keeping the 137 on my left with some of the higher strings and getting some more body and some more of the air. And then the 57A was like right up in the F hole, and got a lot of that like low end sound.
This thing drove us crazy though. I mean, the cello was one of the hardest things to mic because it was like you walk away for 5 minutes and suddenly the entire sound of it changes, and we can't tell if that's humidity or if it's just like the way that it is. So like oftentimes it would make the difference just to move one of the comforter partitions like an inch or two closer, and it would take out, because like we found out that the carbon fiber is so resonant compared to the wood cello that you have to like get rid of the internal resonance by bringing a partition closer. It's just bonkers. Like the stuff that we had to try to get rid of it.
We even like, because the two cellos even have different notes that peak out. So we tried some really weird things. Like for instance, I think we used some of Michael's like drum gels.
The moon gels.
We like put the moon gels on the cello. We like put this like huge like cloth thing like on the tailpiece to try and like soak up some of the certain tones. Like
we would like put our hands on the cello and then like get to a point where we could mute some of the frequencies that were peaking out by putting our hand against it, and then we'd tape cloth to it like frantically.
Yeah.
Like, get it out of there.
I'm sensing the formations of a book here.
Yeah, like, write a whole book about this cello alone.
Schematic illustrations, yeah.
Yep, that's amazing.
Yeah, not to mention if it was like orchestral song or more of like a one, like some of the songs are really stripped down. So the cello is like one or two lines of cello, and some songs are like, we layered like 20 tracks of strings. So it really depended too on the song.
Yeah, and I don't know if we have a picture of it, but we did a couple of the cello tracks downstairs in the living space, which had kind of a higher ceiling. And so that miking was almost completely different than what we did up in the loft. So in the loft, it was more of kind of the close miking, whereas in a room where we had like the bigger ceiling to kind of capture that natural reverb, we still used the Beta 57 up close because and then the 141 on Omni kind of like back off the cello like a foot or two, and then another 141 to capture like the natural room reverb, and that was really cool. I think we did that for one or two tracks, but yeah, just again, it was like every single time we recorded the cello, we had to come at it from like a different angle.
Yeah, a lot of times we would record with 3 different microphones on an instrument, especially early in the process, because we wanted to try blending different tones together, because each Shure mic really brings a different perspective on an instrument. Like there will be some that just really capture the best parts of the high end of an instrument. There's some mics that capture the best parts of the low end. There's some mics that just get it all. But it was just like a matter of like, we started out doing way too much and overthinking it. And then as we got into the later process of the record, we were like, oh, we don't need to do all of that. We can still get the same sound by putting this mic here and this mic here. And boy, howdy did it like just get way more like intuitive over 7 months of recording.
Wow. That's cool. It's great to learn a lot along the way. Let's see here.
Oh yeah, there's
that's Sav's corner.
My corner.
A few instruments there.
I put so many blankets in that corner after that picture was taken. Like we started trying to record just like that, and it was so bouncy, obviously, that we just had to kind of put blankets all over the ceiling and the wall next to me, and like right next to the desk and stuff. But that was the first iteration of it, and yeah, those are all the instruments that I would play over the course of the record. And there's my pedal board kind of peeking out over at the bottom, which we did utilize for the electric violin on some songs.
Yeah, let's see. Do I have another? No, that's a different spot, but Okay. I guess I can go to that one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So the violin, actually, that was the one that didn't give us too much of an issue throughout recording. We would just
Yeah,
put the
almost the exact
137s over
opposite of
top.
a cello.
Yeah, for real. Which is, we thought it would be the other way around, because the violin, like, we're all very sensitive to high frequencies. It really kind of drives us crazy. So we were really watching out for that. But by putting the 137s overhead, it really wasn't too much of a problem, especially when we kind of put them over top each of the F holes, but kind of pointing towards the bridge. And that just captured a lot of warmth in the actual instrument, which my violin is 113 years old, and it was
Oh,
built.
wow.
I know, I inherited it from my grandfather, and like nobody in my family knew that it was built in that, like, Teddy Roosevelt's presidency. So I feel
What
like
make is it?
it's just, it doesn't really say much on the inside, because I took it to a luthier and he was like, yeah, it was built in Grand Rapids by this guy named Williams, and we can't find anything about it.
Oh, no.
You know how many
Okay.
Williams?
Yeah,
There's
it's
got to be
Williams in Grand Rapids.
in like
Um,
1913.
Yeah, for real. But it's basically what I do know is that it has kind of a nice internal warmth to it, and if you can kind of get, it did require a little bit of EQ to get some of the high frequencies out of it, but those microphones really did a great job of capturing that warmth.
Yeah, and being able to use the pair of them too was really nice, because then when you go into the mix, you can kind of like pan those a little bit wider, and so you get this really nice kind of stereo image of the like warmth of the violin, which I will say, yeah, Sav, your violin is like unnaturally warm. It is such like a smooth tone. So yeah, it's funny that with the cello we had to start over pretty much every single time we recorded it. I think every time we did violin, we started with this, and for like 90% of it, it was like perfect.
We did record a little bit of the violin in the bathroom at one point, like, because we were just trying out, like, especially early in the process, we were just trying out different environments in the house. We didn't just stay in the attic. We were like, let's try the bathrooms. Let's try all the bathrooms in the house, and let's put up different microphones and try different things. And what we eventually settled on was a combination of living room, because it had that high ceiling and it had a really nice natural reverb. And then when we were doing closer miking stuff, like when we wanted a different kind of orchestral sound, we would do the loft, and there's a blanket kind of out of shot right above me. So
Speaking of blankets, I had a question from our attendees. Interested in homemade sound treatments, any that didn't work well that you thought would?
So this is insane, but the type of blanket the type of blanket makes all the difference in the world. And like how many times you fold the blanket, like, it was just interesting to find that out, because like thinner blankets will get rid of some frequencies and thicker blankets will get rid of others. And we could have gotten acoustic foam, but I'd read online that foam can be kind of deceptive and kind of mess with your sound. So I was like, I think we have what we need here, guys. Let's just like try out these different blankets, which we live in northern Michigan, so we have an abundance of blankets in the house at all times.
Yeah, I think mostly it was just like trying to figure out ways to pin up the blankets too. Like the one that's above Sav right now, we kind of did in a shape that is like a double hump there, and it's kind of just like trying to get rid of as many different reflections as you can. So if you put a blanket up just kind of like stretched out and straight up and kind of just flush to the wall, it might not do as much as if you kind of put some bends in it and kind of make it more billowy to give like those air pockets.
Too, I think we talked about the CDs, because like what musician doesn't have like a bunch of those cardboard CD boxes and exactly, we were like, oh my God, we're not going on tour. Like these CD boxes are just like taking up space. And so we experimented too with like, it was almost like a giant game of Jenga, where sometimes we started with them pretty close and then ended up trying to separate the boxes a little bit and give it a little more space. But that was a fun one.
The most versatile soundproofing technique that we had was definitely mic stands, which we had a lot of, and then throwing blankets over them and then putting them in places around you, and then listening back, like, do we hear any flutter at all? Are we hearing any noise? Where is the noise of the instrument actually going? Like, where is it? What does it have to bounce off of right now, and where is that going? So we would like think about these and ask those questions, And I think there's a common misconception that like their agent's only as good as their gadgets, but like it really is about like utilizing what you have. Everybody has, blankets. Everybody has like some sort of like thing that they can put in an area that can block your sound. It's just a matter of like trying out different things until you hear or don't hear a problem and trusting your ears to do it.
Absolutely. Let's see here. Let me move on to the next thing. Okay, yeah. So we've got some spots here where you captured a lot of the tracks. You want to go ahead and talk a little bit about that process as well for you?
Yeah, on the left is a very early iteration where we were trying out the Allen and Heath console, and on the right is when we ordered a Roland Studio Capture
with two 16-channel interfaces stacked.
Yeah, and so that's what we ended up using for all of the record was the Roland Studio Captures, and we chose to put the mixing booth and the tracking booth kind of in the corner that had the most square looking iteration, because I had read online that like you want to have a room that's like kind of longish. You have any angles are like blocked off with some partitioning, and then it has a straight sound. It can go straight through this like easy ceiling kind of area. So based on what we knew, we were like, well, we can't really get all of that in the attic, but we can do our best by having that general shape. So we chose, that's actually the foot of my bed. And that's where the desk got put. And that's Michael's computer. And we're using Yamaha speakers, which we've used for every record. We use HS5 Yamahas. So, or HS8.
And we actually put a blanket partition behind the mixing booth because we were getting like weird mid blowback off of the wall. So we just tried to like put something behind there to kind of muffle or disperse those weird mid frequencies that were happening. Because I mean, at the same time, it's kind of like just getting to know your space as well. Even if your space isn't perfect, if you know what makes it tick, you can like account for those things.
You can see there's a little air conditioning unit to the right. We were recording this throughout the summer months, and the problem was you couldn't have the AC on because it was too loud. It would get picked up by different mics, and it was a really hot summer. So all of us were like dying during this period, and every time we stopped tracking, we turned on like 3 different air conditioning units and just like waited while we were listening.
It's so true. That was so hard.
Yep.
We were like, oh man, we got to do this take one more time, but that means you can't turn on the air conditioning for a while. Sacrifice.
Yep.
Absolutely. All right, let me move on to the next one here. Oh, of course, what studio would be complete without the most important part? Coffee.
Right? Coffee and tea. That's all we drank. Coffee. I had actually, this is funny. I had like 400 tea bags, like empty tea bags that I bought for like $11 online, and we are down to like the last 50. We drank so much tea between the 3 of us, almost 400 cups of tea.
I think there's a pattern forming here.
Mm-hmm. And we had a wonderful collection of mugs.
Yep. Always with the tea in hand on the coffee.
Right. Oh, there's more.
So that room too, that room's pretty interesting. That was a closet that is kind of situated in the back part of the attic, which we haven't mentioned this yet, but we called this studio Atticus Blue because we had like a couple of names picked out, and we asked our Patreon to vote, and they picked that one because it's blue walls and it's in an attic. So that is a closet area. We ripped out like all the hanging systems, and it's also our merch fulfillment room. So all the cabinets that you see on either side are full of unsold merchandise. And and this is like the live streaming room. So the light rings are there, which we're using right now, and you can kind of see this standing desk thing with the monitor on it. And we would do all of our live streaming from this room. So we had one of the 16-channel interfaces was devoted to recording, and the other one was devoted to live streaming. So we didn't have to like constantly move XLRs up and down, up and down.
Yeah, for the first couple of months, before we got the interfaces in, we were like unplugging everything every time we had to do a live stream.
Yeah, which that just wrapping cables sometimes. I love wrapping cables, but not every day.
Right.
So yeah, that's the live streaming room. We did a lot of work from there.
Cool. I think, let's see here. Yep. There's some more gear shots here.
There's the 2 Roland studio captures, and then that is the inside of the vocal booth. We tried out the KSM 44A as well as the SM7B.
Okay.
We actually ended up using the SM7B for a lot of vocals. You can kind of hear, if I wasn't using this mic, you would hear a lot more abrasive frequencies that are innately in my voice. Like I'm one of those people where you can always hear my voice in a crowd of people because I'm just loud and high pitched. So the SM7B does a really good job of getting rid of a lot of that, or at least warming a lot of that up. Whereas Katie kind of has this alto voice. It's really NPR-ish, very quiet, very smooth. So sometimes the SM7B can be a little boomy on her. So sometimes she would sing on the KSM 44A, and that would kind of bring all those frequencies that are innate into a more audible setting. Michael's voice just sounds great no matter what. So
yeah, Michael's
he was easy.
That's great. Which DAW did you guys use for this?
We used Logic.
Logic, okay.
All of us had Logic. All of us are familiar in Logic. We used Logic on the road before this, and then we were like, might as well keep working in something that we know. So that's what we used.
Awesome. Let's see here. No, not that yet. Okay, well, cool. So were there any like major aha moments along the way that you discovered in the process?
Michael, can we talk about the final guitar miking technique that we figured out, like maybe the last month in?
Yeah, true.
Oh, absolutely. Because I was so excited when we finally like figured it out and getting it to work. Because now I just want to do it with everything, you know. But we finally figured out how to do mid-side recording, and we used I believe it was the KSM 44A. So we put that as bidirectional. And then we used one of the 137s pointed directly at like wherever the center of the guitar was going to be. And
it would sit on top of the KSM too.
Yeah, almost touching it, like really, really close to it. And then once we would get into the DAW, after we recorded what we were going to record, we would duplicate the track that came from the KSM 44A, and we would flip the phase on the duplicated track and then pan them hard left and right. And it just opened up this huge stereo image of whatever we were recording. I think the first thing we tried it on was the mandolin on one of our songs. I think it was Fractals. And we were like, oh, that's what we've been looking for this whole time. Like, it was just one of those brain, like, why have we not been doing this for this whole, you know, like, it would just solve so many problems that we were, you know, moving mics around for a couple of hours to find out. But, you know, again, it was kind of like we didn't know until we tried it. So it was definitely, at least for me, that was probably the biggest aha moment when we like finally opened up all the tracks and we heard that stereo image of the guitar. We were all like, oh, this is awesome.
The other good one was when we actually put out a song called How Many Hands that we recorded in the attic, and it was finally like out there in the world, and we were just like, we did that. We all engineered it, we all mixed it, we all tracked it, we all comped it. We spent days and weeks on just the song, and now it's out in the world and it sounds just as good as everything we've ever done with anybody. And it just was this huge boost of confidence. So it was like, you know, it's so hard to start and it's so hard to take the initiative to do something like this. It just feels like such a massive project. And in some ways it is, but it pays off because not only do you get something you're proud of, you learn so much and you learn that anybody can do it. You know, you just have to trust your ears and work on them and take care of them.
And I think the other valuable part about being in your home studio and having the experience of recording by yourself is learning how kind of being an engineer, I feel like helps you become a better producer, and being a better producer helps you become a better musician. And each role in the recording process has an influence on the others. So, you know, it was actually kind of a challenge at some points because we'd be, you know, behind the microphone and like thinking 10 steps ahead about, you know, the tone and the mixing and the performance and the emotion and the production and the genre and what the song was going to turn out like, and being able to compartmentalize those in your head and learn how they all connect. Like, I think we have such a appreciation for every single role that we had going into it, but that we didn't quite fully understand as much as we do now.
It's true.
Gotcha. Well, I'm going to try and see if I can get to this video that you supplied for us here real quick. And let's see. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, you'll see the beginning of the video has a bunch of bean bags, which we didn't mention it. One of the first partitions we tested out was these humongous bean bags that were in the basement just sitting there, and we tried to put those in the drum room. And so, yeah, you'll see.
Because we were like, we want the deadest drums ever. We want no reflections.
Too dead.
We did not end up using them.
Oh,
yeah.
Yes. All right, let me give this a try here. Let's see if we can roll this.
Bringing up a giant bean bag so we can soundproof the room with it and have room to put the cases downstairs. Here we go. Oh, mosquito season again. Would you rather stay inside or be eaten alive? Oh, it's mosquito season again. Would you rather stay inside or be eaten alive?
Oh man, Mike, you're doing the live version. We were supposed to end like Tucker.
Yeah.
Oh, what?
That was my bad.
We're ending like Tucker version.
Did we do a different ending in Tucker's studio?
Yes.
Oh,
Yep. The
well,
violin high thing happened over the last chorus. So it was like, digga, 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 like over us singing. And then, it was like, would you rather stay inside? Yeah, that's how it was.
Yeah, I literally haven't heard the Tucker version
forgot it,
since we
yeah.
recorded it.
I'm going to do another
Oh, really?
one.
Yeah, I know.
Good for you. You don't have demoitis on it like I do. From the top.
Demo one.
Not being able to go out to Portland was kind of a disappointment in the fact that we are so excited to move forward with this music. But in a way, I think it was a gift to have a little more time. In all of our other sessions, across all of our albums, we've always done like one track a day, and it's always been in between tour dates. So we looked at this as kind of an opportunity to sit on the music for a while and be really intentional about all the tracks. There's so much that we want to pour into this record, and I think we kind of came home off of tour and thought, let's just try doing some demos. Like, let's see what we might want to, do with these new tunes. And then we realized, like, we have everything we need to go ahead and track.
We had a guest room in the back. We took the bed downstairs and put the guest room in the basement. We took all of the boxes of CDs that people hadn't bought, and we stacked them and made partitions and threw comforters over them to help block sound. We made a drum room in one side corner out of the partitions. There was another bed because the band attic used to be just like the band attic. It was covered in beds. We flipped the bed upside down and or like vertical basically, and made that another part of the partition. So now it's just this big sphere on the drums.
Yeah, it became a really interesting process. I feel really excited, and it hasn't been easy by any means, but having that extra time, I think, has made this record sound different than anything we've ever done.
I display them like I hate them, but deep down I'm proud of them.
All right, that was cool.
Yup. Inside look at all of our
Yeah.
shenanigans.
Well, thanks for putting that together for us.
Yeah.
What would you say are some of the tips, the biggest tips and most important things you've learned along this process?
I mean, we've said it a lot on this call, but use your ears and trust your ears is just the most important. I think, I actually went to school for audio tech for a year. It wasn't a super long time. But then, we did like 6 years of touring. And when I got back to this, it was like, I could reference this chart in my head of like, this is the frequency that you take out of the kick drum. And like, this is the frequency you take out of the snare. Or, we could just listen to what we've been hearing all along, like what we know the instruments to sound like. And then try to get as close to that as possible. Start with what your instrument actually sounds like.
Yeah.
And use what's around you.
Also go outside. That was, we put in some really long hours, and just as we had to adjust to being on tour and being on the road and taking care of the mental and physical health, when you're out there, we had to basically relearn that from scratch once we were in one place for 6 months. So being able to set some deadlines for yourself and get outdoors, drink water and eating, all of that for sure were things we kind of had to re-practice. And I think another big thing we took away that was kind of a hard lesson to learn was that no time is wasted. So there were times where we would go through and track something and demo it and go through and find the perfect tempo map and then record it again and again. And even if some of those songs don't see the light of day, or even if projects you're working on, if they don't come out right, that time is still so valuable. I mean, we are still learning, and we've learned so much through the whole process.
Yeah, each of the songs on this record, we probably recorded around 6 to 7 times, just over and over again. We come back and we're like, oh, it's foundationally, it needs to be this. And like, we got to do it again. And like, it's just having patience with yourself, but also not overthinking it too. It's just finding that balance that works for you. Like, don't give up on things just because it's hard. Keep trying because it's worth it. She's right. There's no such thing as time wasted on it.
Yeah, and I would say to always continually be looking for more information and to keep learning. I think through this, like, there's been a YouTube channel that I have been watching through a lot of this, where, initially when we were starting, I was trying to look up YouTube videos to kind of understand how to do like certain things in Logic, or, how to do certain miking techniques. And I would go through all these videos and find people that I just didn't click with, or that just weren't explaining it in a way that I could engage with it. But eventually I finally found a channel where somebody just like really calmly and really simply explained everything, and like, so, and to put on with that as well, we reached out to a lot of people as well if we had questions. And I think that it's really important to, reach out to people who inspire you and who, you could probably garner some really, really wonderful information from. So yeah, I think the learning experience of this whole summer recording this album was invaluable. And just keep exploring and keep learning and never think you know everything.
Well, if you're comfortable, if you're comfortable with it, can you share some of the people who you reached out to for advice on some things?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Go for it.
Go ahead. Well, I was just going to say Brad Novak was huge for percussion. We also sent songs around to management. And one thing that we were trying to focus on too was like, what's our goal with the record? Like, are we trying to make some of these like radio friendly, or trying to make these Spotify friendly? How much of this are we sticking to like the actual, song? Like, does this appeal to you? So, trusting the ears of other people and getting outside of it when we needed to was huge. My dad also and my mom, both of them are musicians, and they were in the house, and they would like come up and they'd be like, oh, you know what you should try? You should try this thing. Like, you should try this thing. Or like, hey, the cello sounds a little boomy. Maybe move the mic. Because you get so close to the project, it's really good to like have somebody else come in, even if they don't know anything about music. Like, just have them come in and be like, you hear anything weird here? And just they should trust their ears too. Like, everybody has different opinions and it's all subjective, but people, anytime you can have somebody else in the room listening and saying, this is what I hear is worthy of that time.
to add to that, reaching out for people about, you said we were sending things out to management to get an ear on the songs, but we were also sending songs out to other musician friends of ours to potentially, get us unstuck from either demoitis, where we couldn't unhear a part that we were playing, or just to get new ideas in our head. Yeah, Kate, do you have an example of that?
Oh, I reached out to our friend Dave Hoy, who plays cello, and asked him for, what he would do for a solo on a song, and sat down and shedded it and learned a couple of his licks, and then turned them into a completely new solo. And we reached out to Martin Sexton, and he flew in tracks. We got
Sawyer Fredericks did
Sawyer
one.
Fredericks, yeah.
Josh Davis. It was like one song that we were just like, there's so many different ways this song could be. It could sound like John Mayer, or it could sound like James Taylor. Like, what do we do? And so we just sent it to like 5 different guitar players, and they all played different rhythm tracks on it. And every time it came back, it was like, this is a totally different song now. Dominic Davis, also, he's a bass player out of Nashville, plays with Jack White. He's like, anytime I really need to like get outside of my head on a song where I'm playing bass, I just send it to him, and I'm like, what would you do? And he'll send a track back and be like, this is what I do. Listen to it, take pieces of it, write other pieces, and work from there. Like, there's so many people we did that with, all musicians, all friends of ours, and just ask them like, hey, can you just like lay a track on this on like a voice memo on your iPhone? And
and for that, I want to shout out Mike Shimon, because I was just having a breakdown on this one song, trying to figure out what drums to put on it. And Mike is a fantastic drummer. I've known him for years, and he plays with some of our good friends in Michigan, like Mayor Lewine and Josh Davis, and a bunch of those good folks. And he sent back a voice memo of him like beatboxing the part, but he's so good at it, like vocalizing everything that was going on, that I knew like exactly what he was trying to say. And so it ended up pretty much becoming the basis for the drum beat on a certain song. So yeah,
well,
shout out Mike.
We weren't even gonna have drums on that song until he did that. It was like, oh, that's how it could
that's how you could do,
and it's so worth it as a result. We were also, in the midst of this, we were also doing a ton of co-writes with Kim Ritchie and Dar Williams, Tom Paxton, like all these people. We were just doing co-writes over Zoom and learning so much from just them about, how you would approach a song, like how fast do you get to the chorus, etc. And sometimes we'd re-record a song based on that, or like at the same time, like this is funny too. We were on our Patreon. We have a throwback album review club that we do every 2 weeks, and they would like come to the table with this Ricky Lee Jones album, and we listen very intentionally to like the band and Ricky Lee Jones and James Taylor and Jackson Browne, and we were like listening to these people and being like, these are references too. Like, we're listening to very like classic records. What's working? Why are these songs still resonate? How do we tap into that? That kind of thing. So much of it was just environmental and really crucial to the process.
A lot of communication involved there, huh?
A lot of community. You cannot do things alone, I feel like. If you can't do it alone, you can always ask other people.
Yep. Absolutely. Even just amongst yourselves, formulating the songs and watching them grow and evolve throughout the recording process. That had to be pretty rewarding.
I would say there was like 3 months of pre-production that I did not know was pre-production until after 3 months had gone by. Because I was like, the songs are done, right? And everybody's like, no.
There was at least one song I think we re-recorded 5 times. Just from the first version of it to the final version of it. And it would just, just a lot of back and forth.
I think, there's good that comes in not knowing if you're recording a demo or not. There's good that comes in like just recording it like you would be recording it on the album. And there's also good that comes from knowing you're recording a demo, and feel free to try things and make mistakes. Like, you don't necessarily have to decide that in the moment. That's what I learned. That was a big one for me.
Yeah. And I think touching on communication, like you mentioned, Ryan, it's like, of course, we're trying to be really connective with our networks and our family and friends and music industry connections, but also just the communication between the 3 of us has been so important, and we learned so much about each other and ourselves during this process. And one of the big things is, as soon as you're behind the desk, you have to set your ego at the door and just go into it, with a really intentional goal of kind of knowing what you like to listen to and what you want the song to turn out to be, and being open enough to new ideas and feedback, and also being able to know when that gut feeling is telling you to record something. It's so much balance, and it was a really good test, I feel like, to come out on the other side. Yeah, there's lots of crying, there was lots of laughter, like there's lots of hysterical, like 2 a.m. nights where we were like talking to the cat, and
we were like, you decide, and we like set out like a piece of paper that said guitar and a piece of paper that said violin and put treats on it, and we were like, what should we record next, Nashville? And then see which one he ate. That's how hysterical it got. It was just like we were completely delusional by the end of it.
It gets scary when the cat starts talking back, right?
Yeah. So,
Yeah, exactly.
Like, wait a second. He's not supposed to do that.
Wow. So we're getting close to the end here, and we always try to throw this question out at the end. So to each of you, favorite Shure product?
Oh boy.
Man,
I know some.
Is it the Beta 57? Because I love that thing now. I mean, and it's so funny because like we had a guy who was also helping with some of the mixing, and he was like, I was surprised at the sounds you got out of that Beta 57. I'm like, don't you be talking smack, because it is such a great, versatile microphone. It's so like warm and fantastic, and we just, I loved it after this.
Yeah, I'd say like one thing that has come in handy as soon as we got the in-ear monitors. We use them for our stage show for years, just because we play like wireless electric cello and electric violin and guitar, and we've been able to like jump off the stage and hear everything really clearly in our ears. And then as soon as we pivoted to doing live streaming, and Sav's been doing lots of consultation with how to live stream, like musicians who are wanting to do concerts from their house with OBS or StreamYard. And so we've just been using these a ton. We have the headphones and the in-ear monitors, and they're just like super.
Between the two, you can
nice.
just try out different songs through them. Make sure that like this song sounds like this through this and this and this, and it's all consistent and sounds good and balanced. It's good to have options.
Yeah, and I'll add for the in-ear monitors for doing the studio, for a lot of getting the sounds, when we were miking the cello up close, having those in-ear monitors to monitor with was really helpful because of how much sound deadening they provide, to where I could put my head like right next to the cello with the microphone and still only be hearing, what was coming through the microphone. So that was super helpful. Yeah. I think my favorite piece of equipment is the KSM 141.
Yeah.
If I'm going to throw a curveball, because I love an omnidirectional microphone. Like, it's so versatile, especially for an overhead on the drums, but also using it as like a room mic to capture reverb. I think we tried it on the electric guitar amp as kind of a further back mic to kind of get a big picture of, an electric guitar amp. But it was just like that. I think that was my favorite mic through the whole session, just because sometimes it would really surprise you of what you could just throw it on and make sound wonderful. So yeah, I'm going with the KSM 141.
Okay, and I know I'm cheating now, but the SM7B too was like so integral to getting the right vocal sounds on this record, man. Like, it's hard to find microphones that work on our voices. Our voices are really weird, and oftentimes it takes, if we're singing like just into anything, like it just can be a hassle sometimes in different venues, but these boys like took care of so much of it. It was easy. So nice.
It's okay,
anyway.
Sav. We'll allow it just this one time.
I get two choices.
Perfect. Well, great. I want to say thank you to all three of you, Katie, Sav, and Michael, for joining us today. We learned quite a bit along the way, and we thank you for sharing your experiences with us. And where can people go to hear this album?
Well, it's not out yet, but it will be. Okay. Follow theaccidentalsmusic.com as our website, and we're on Facebook and Instagram, and now we're on TikTok, which is hilarious, and just everywhere. Just give us a follow.
Okay. And there's a YouTube video out already, right? For How Many Hands?
There
That's right.
is. You can check
Okay.
it out on youtube.com/more accidentals. And we also have a Patreon page where we do a lot of behind the scenes stuff. There's some demos for songs that are on the album that, we've just kind of been putting out there and testing out the water. And, as a patron, you get a lot of, influence and say, and, you hang with us. So patreon.com/the accidentals. Really fun.
Excellent. Well, on behalf of the entire market development team and artist relations, thanks to all of our attendees for joining in today. And Katie, Sav, and Michael, thank you so much. Everyone
Hey,
have a
thanks,
great
Brian.
weekend.
Thank you.
Okay,
This
so
was so
much.
much fun. I love getting an opportunity to just nerd out.
Yeah.
Well, we do too. So thank you for joining us. And everyone have a great weekend.
You too.
All right. Take care.